Happy Saturday. Welcome to the Scoop World Order. Great show. First week of spring ball is in the books. The pads are on. Guys are starting to step up. Guys are starting to separate. Tyler Bowen is making some serious noise on the recruiting trail. We're going to break down the number one player in the country visited, a huge offensive tackle, fantastic genetically. And then you've got some Sam Greer's in the boat now. We're going to have some big waves in this offensive line recruiting class, and that doesn't even talk about any of the portal kids we potentially could land. So we're going to break all that down and take your questions. As always, if you guys enjoy our content, please leave us a like, click subscribe, also click that little alert bell. Again, good to be home. I was on the road for a little bit. I'm sure you guys could tell, but it was. I appreciate you guys all tuning into that Michigan thing. That was crazy. Had to go and get one in for you guys, but just appreciate all that you guys do. Again, continue to support us on Apple Podcasts. If you guys could do something huge for us, please get on your podcast app on your iPhone, type in Buckeye Scoop, click subscribe, completely free, along with YouTube. Two things that we're trying to grow. And also, this is a great time to subscribe to our message board. BuckeyeScoop.com has been growing at a dramatic rate, and it's been really fun to have the community growing. Our golf outing got announced. It'll be fantastic up in Youngstown. So really, really good time. A lot of good stuff coming up. We're going to keep you guys all in the loop for that. But with that being said, going to bring in my good friend Nevadabuck. Nevada, how goes it? Nice day financially after this UFC card. Dogs on Poppy swept the card again. He's on fire per usual. So good start to the day for us. But your thoughts on some of the recent developments with spring ball and also with what Tyler Bowen has been doing on the recruiting trail?
Well, we've been talking about Tyler Bowen, and the question really was, you know, was what was he going to do here at Ohio State? And we all know it's a good in-state class, but could he recruit nationally? What's going to be his philosophy? How's he going to go about his business? Is he going to cast a wider net? Could he possibly have an impact on offensive line recruiting, much like OG Walt had in the defensive backfield and Brian Hartline had it as a wide receiver coach? Because there are levels. There's levels to recruiting. And, we've seen Ohio State's never bad. So it's not like, hey, Tyler, any coach is going to take us from bad to good, because in recruiting, we're always good. We're always top 5, top 3, top 2, top 10, whatever. Our recruiting's not been a problem. But I'm going to tell you, Tyler Bowen's going to level up offensive line recruiting for Ohio State, because I've heard it from enough people now. I've heard it from enough agents. I've heard it from enough parents. I've heard it from enough recruits. He's different. He has a different energy about the recruiting. He is casting the wider net. He is being way more aggressive. He does have us in play for a lot of guys beyond the borders of Ohio. And I'm look, a player like Jackson Cantwell, number one player in the country out of Missouri, um, trying to get a guy like that is a long shot, because everybody's in on him. Everybody wants him. It's going to be a difficult pull. But Tyler Bowen's got us in the game, and he's got us in the game, and the game is definitely afoot with him after this visit. I won't say it turned heads, but it certainly, their schools at this point are kind of eliminating themselves in this type of derby. And Tyler Bowen is really good at what he's doing, and he's keeping us in the game. He's moving us up the list on a lot of recruits, and I think it's going to bear big fruit. And like I said, I think it's going to be beyond just getting the good guys in Ohio or getting the occasional thing here. I really think we could go on an elite recruiting run in the offensive line. And now, my philosophy on offensive line. I like Ohio kids. I've always liked the guys in our room anyway. Last year, when people were bemoaning the fact that we had no depth in the offensive line room, we had Carson Hinsman, Austin Sirewald, Luke Montgomery, and Zen Mikulski languishing on the bench last year at the time. So we've always had dudes in there, but I can't imagine what it would be like if you had dudes upon dudes upon dudes, and then put them in a great development situation where you've got multiple offensive line coaches. Like as you pointed out many times, I think we've got 3 or even 4 offensive line coaches now. We could be going into kind of a interesting period of time for offensive line recruiting, and talking about it amongst the elite units from a recruiting standpoint. And that's different, and that's exciting. And that's the Tyler Bowen experience, and I'm here for it. So I'm certainly excited about it.
Yeah, I mean he's been killing it. I mean he's the first. And honestly, I think Justin Fry potentially could be a head coach one day, but Tyler Bowen, I said this maybe a week or two ago, where I said that this is on this offensive staff. I think every single guy on that staff is going to be a head coach, and it's not common. But this is kind of reminds me of like the 2012 staff that Urban had his first year when, you looked around the room and you saw Tom Herman, you saw Vrabes, you saw Luke Fickell. I think Zach Smith would have been a head coach, if he stayed in the profession. This is, I think, even at a higher level, because you've got, I think that Keenan Bailey is going to be a head coach. Brian Hartline is going to be a head coach. Carlos Loughlin will be a head coach. I think Tyler Bowen is going to be a head coach. I think that he's a guy that, he's been very organized. I think he has a good demeanor for recruiting, which I think is important. Sometimes, again, offensive linemen don't get the reputation for being the most smooth operators in the world. And frankly, there's not many line coaches that are dominating recruiters. I think that it's more about the programs. I think it's more about, I think the head coach usually has to help the line coach, because again, they're not, slick and ready to talk jive like a lot of, the more flashy position guys can be. But Tyler Bowen's casts a wide net. I think that, something that I keep going back to, and I just kind of refuse to think that this doesn't help, is the fact that, when you've got two other line coaches that are guys that were when you've got a guy that was a line coach at Oklahoma State and a guy that's a line coach at Purdue, who's also been at Mississippi State, kind of been around the block a little bit, I think that helps with some intel. I think that if you're Ryan Day, I would point to the fact that, look, we've got three guys that are full-time line. They're all full-time line coaches last year. I mean, Tyler was obviously an offensive coordinator. And this is going to be our model going forward in development. I mean, I would highlight the crap out of that if I was Ryan. I'd say, look, we want to have three offensive line coaches that are, if a guy's in between jobs, if a guy's an analyst, but our model is we're going to have three, full-time offensive line coaches on our staff. Obviously, you've got Tyler, who's the head guy. But these are two really good line coaches. These are guys that'll be, they'll be head line coaches again soon, I believe, with Marcus Johnson and Charlie Dickey. I think that those are guys that they've got a lot of clout, a lot of energy. I think that that'll help with the development, just because when you've got guys that have been really successful. I mean, Oklahoma State has put a lot of really good players in the league. I mean, both those guys have put good players into the league. And I think that that's really helpful for development in the room, and the personalities. And I think that that's genius by Ryan Day, because we always talk about it's the hardest position to coach. It's the hardest position to develop. It's very difficult to develop the offensive line. So Ryan, kind of didn't lighten the load, but he reinforced it with, the most coaches. I mean, you have three full-time line coaches. Like, you don't have that at any other position. It's not like we have two running back coaches and two receiver coaches, and but the line it does. And again, I think Tyler Bowen, obviously the edict, I'm sure, was laid down by Ryan that he wanted to enhance this recruiting of the offensive line. But again, as much as it was fashionable to bash Justin Fry for David Sanders Jr., I have a hard time giving a kid who's a developmental kid at a developmental position, because I think even David Sanders Jr. is a developmental player. Like, if he came to Ohio State and early enrolled and we tried to start him at, right tackle this year, I don't think it would be beneficial for him. I think that there'd be a lot of hiccups. So to skip out on giving that kid like $2.5 million, like, I'm good with it, because I know what we gave Ethan Onyanwa, and I know we gave Philip Daniels, and we got those guys for less than what we would have paid for one true freshman. And frankly, unless a guy is a stone cold killer like Caleb Downs or Jeremiah Smith, it's hard to completely upset the apple cart when it comes to the NIL deal that you're going to give a kid as a freshman or as a transfer player. So, like with JJ and Caleb, there isn't a player with a brain on the team that can say, oh, well, he doesn't deserve what we paid JJ and what we paid Caleb, because they are the two best players in the country. But to give that to like a freshman, like we would have had to do with David Sanders, I don't think it's wise. Now, the thing that'll be interesting is what kind of ratio or how active are we in the transfer portal with Tyler Bowen? I think that that still has to be a big part of the plan to patch holes. I mean, Ethan Onion was only here for 1 year. So you got to figure out the left tackle situation. Is there someone on the roster that can do it? Does someone become available? Because again, the transfer portal obviously is going to be a huge asset for Ohio State going forward, but you're kind of as faithful as your options when it comes to guys that we could go after, guys that we could pay. Because I think that if a stone cold starter comes in like Seth McLaughlin or Josh Simmons, I think you got to go do it, and then let everything else fall where it may. And I think that you could almost treat center and left tackle kind of like a quarterback type spot where you just want to make sure that you've got a stud at either position. And I think that that's going to be very interesting to see how they manage it. But again, we had Cantwell was here, Sam Greer was here. These guys are getting to campus. I think that they're really excited. I think, frankly, the depth chart is pretty enticing. And again, this is something that I always hated when kids would talk about the depth chart, because especially now that the depth chart is so fluid. But if I'm Sam Greer, one of those guys, I'm looking at that depth chart and I'm saying, yeah, we got Cardelos in front of me, but you're gonna, if you go somewhere good, you have to beat somebody out. But I think that there's guys that are very beat outable, if that's not a word, but I'm gonna make it one. But again, I like the aggression. Again, I'm sure that was an edict, and again, I said, this Ohio class is an exceptional offensive line class, so I think that that's going to be obviously to Tyler's benefit. Because again, Greg Sudwara, I thought Greg Sudwara and Urban or whoever helped him out was the best offensive line recruiter that we've had, at least in the last 25 years. But Tyler Bowen might pass him in short order. But when you look at the number of 5-stars that Sud brought in, you can't argue it. Because again, you can say whatever you want about the guy. And again, I don't know if it was him. I don't know if it was Urban. I don't know if it was Mickey. I don't know if it was Pantoni. But during his reign, we had incredible offensive lineman that came here. And he also, sometimes it's easy to judge the guy for the 5-stars, but he pounded the table hard for Thayer Munford when Thayer was 360 pounds and wasn't what he turned into by the end of his career. By the end of his career, he's a blocko, he's a captain, NFL draft pick, kind of the whole 9 yards. And you got to give guys credit for those guys, the diamond and the rough guys, because you're not going to get 5-stars in a class. There's going to be some projects you have to take, especially with the way you have to budget your money. Nevada, any other thoughts on Tyler Bowen, or we can get into a little bit of spring practice?
No, I think Tyler's going to be kind of the benefactor of the way Ohio State rotated the offensive lineman last year. That's another thing that you're getting from the recruits and from the parents is they like that rotation. They like the idea that they went beyond just 5 offensive linemen. The creativity that they showed in the offensive line. We've talked about how they went 9 deep after injury. And I think that's going to be. I think rotating on the offensive line is going to become more of a thing in college football than it's ever been before because of the college football playoff expansion. I think when you were going 10 games and stuff like that, you could probably get away with only having 5 guys and just kind of doing it that way. But when you're going 16, 17 games deep, it's more like an NFL season. And you follow NFL teams, NFL, offensive linemen get hurt all the time. I mean, it's not quite like other positions, but it's not uncommon for guys to be out, and you need to have your backup or your backup or your backup and have guys that have versatility, guys that can play all over the line, switching all over there. And I think Ohio State's really using that as a selling point that you come here, you're good enough, you're going to get playing time, and you don't have to wait 2 years, you don't have to wait 3 years to get it. If you're good enough, we'll put you out there right away. And I think that really made an impact on him as well. So I mean, Tyler Bowen's getting certainly he's getting all the tailwinds of a national championship and the fact that there's a great in-state class and all the good feelings that are surrounding Ohio State right now. But he's certainly taken advantage of it. And I'm excited to see what he can do with it. I'm really I think of it this way. It's kind of like I always was excited to see what Urban Meyer could do with the talent of Ohio State, and because we'd kind of gone with the I don't want to say Trussell was the covered wagon offense, but you operated in it. It was a little less imaginative than we had. And I always wondered what would happen if Urban Meyer brought in a top, notch offensive coordinator, and we did things, and then we've kind of got a chance. We've experienced that. We've experienced the evolution of the offense. From Urban Meyer to Ryan Day, and to where we are. We've seen Chip Kelly here. We've seen a lot of exciting things. Well, I'm excited to see what can happen with offensive line recruiting if we really attack it with with a young, aggressive offensive line coach. I just want to see what happens. Could be a spectacular failure. Maybe it'll be a nothing burger. Maybe it'll just be there. But I have a hunch he's going to have a similar impact to what O.G. Walton, to what Brian Hartline had for Ohio State, and that would be nothing but good news for the Buckeyes.
Yeah, I think that when you look at what he's done, and again, I think that the NIL era, like nobody in the country is going to benefit more from NIL than Ohio State, and I truly believe that. Again, in the times when I was there as a player, there as a coach, I know that we would lose kids because of the bagmen in the South. That's not just some sort of fiction. That's not just some sort of the program reference or some sort of movie or show. I mean, that really happened. And so now that the playing field is level and we can pay some of these kids, especially tackles, because tackles go for an insane amount of money at this point. Like, I mean, when I hear the numbers that go around, it's crazy. But good for them. I mean, honest to God, it's like I said, I don't regret anything in life, but it's like I would have had some significant offers, especially after if you're a guy that starts as a freshman and you're a freshman All-American, like you're gonna get like some crazy offers. And again, and that's great. But I think that with Ohio State and the way that we're positioning the offensive line, I like adding some seasoned guys every year. Like I like adding, Ethan Oniano is a very interesting kid. He's a guy that I believe wants to be a doctor. Again, a lot of guys, very, very bright kid. So he's a great fit for the team, great fit for the locker room. He's a guy that can learn the playbook easily, which I think is something that, as much as you go through the recruiting process and you study these kids and what makes them tick, when you take smart kids, it makes your life a billion times easier. Because when you take dumb players, it's like you recruit your own problems. And I think that we've got a really sharp group. And I think you made a great point about that rotation, because this is coming from me, a guy that rotated as a freshman for the first few games. And it's a totally different feeling when you rotate in and play some on the offensive line than if you don't play at all. Because I distinctly remember my first game as a redshirt freshman when I was eligible to play. We're playing Cincinnati. We're playing terrible. And I was supposed to rotate in like the third series or some series, and I didn't get in the first half. And I remember walking up that ramp. I was hot. I mean, I was furious. I didn't say anything, nothing demonstrative, nothing crazy. But when you're promised you're going to play and you say there's going to be a rotation, then there's no rotation because we're sucking on offense. Then it affects you. Your mental state. And just because when someone promises you something and you don't deliver it, it's not great. So I think of Luke Montgomery, a kid who, frankly, they didn't play at all the entire season. There was a little bit of surprise when he went in. I don't know if it was the end of the Indiana game or what game it was, where he went in at the very end for like the last drive after Donnie. I think Zen got hurt, and I think they put Donnie out at tackle, and then Luke came in at left guard, which was it surprised everybody. I think that was Indiana. But like the thought of like Luke Montgomery, and if Luke doesn't play in the playoffs and they keep it as the Tigra and Austin Seyerveld show, what's his mental state coming out of the season? And more importantly, does it make him closer to potentially entering the portal? Because that's the thing that I think about with the rotations. Because on the offensive line, it's tough, man, because you only play 5 guys. Every other position in the entire team rotates. Linebackers rotate, D-line, cornerbacks, safety sometimes, probably not to a huge degree. Then obviously on the offensive side, you get the running backs, receivers. The quarterback and the O-line are the 2 spots that don't rotate. Tight ends rotate a ton. So I think that the freshness, I think, is a very important point about rotating guys and keeping guys fresh. But I think that like the mental status of the kids and getting them in. Because again, this is just as a guy that played is, when you finish that game out and you don't play a single play, it's not a good feeling. Whether you're not good enough to play, whether you're injured, whatever, it sucks. But when you get in and rotate and the team wins and you feel like you did your part and you helped out and you did something, even if you're just on, like a special team, it's a whole different feeling. So I think that the way we rotated was huge. But yeah, I'm just excited about this line class. I think that we've got some major pieces in play with Cantwell, who again, like those are the kind of kids I want. Great genetics, tough kid, really good film. I think Sam Greer's got a ton of upside. Again, I could toss this film on while we're on here. And then you got Max Riley. I mean, you've got three guys that are really highly rated guys that can potentially play multiple positions. I think Riley's going to end up, he could play any of the five. You might, if you get Sam Greer and you get Cantwell, you can't have him playing tackle because those will be your two tackles. But like I said, it's going to be interesting to see how this thing shakes out. And again, you also have to account for the fact that we will lose guys in the portal after this year on the O-line, just because that's just the new normal. There's going to be guys at every position that are going to dip out. But I think that it's going to be a nice run. Again, Tyler Bowen got here right in the nick of time, right when this epic Ohio offensive line class is getting ready to get harvested. And him and Ryan Day are doing a great job. And again, I think that this approach that we have is going to be incredible to watch over the next year or two, as long as we can keep Tyler Bowen here. Because again, these guys are there's a lot of guys on the staff that are going to be moving up fast to be coordinators or be head coaches in short order, in my opinion. Nevada Spring Ball has moved along. We're through the first week. We've had a little bit of buzz. I mean, obviously, I think Cardell Tate has taken a big step from people that I talked to at practice. Austin Seyerveld was named Iron Buckeye. He's been one of my favorites for a couple of years now because I loved his film in high school. I loved that I think he was the punter on the team, which did kickoffs and crazy stuff like that. But he's a kid that is becoming a rock on the offensive line, and he's going to be a guy that's going to lock down a starting spot. Who are some other guys that you're excited and you've heard some stuff about as this week has progressed?
Well, I mean, the big thing that I heard was that Julian Sane is absolutely looking the part. And that was something that, for me, we talk about the items of concern for a team. You and I both know we're our harshest critics when we come to the Buckeyes because we know the team so well. So we're familiar with where the errors are. And while the rest of the world looks at Ohio State and preseason number one, poised for back-to-back. And I'm looking at, hey, how do we stop the run, on the defense? We've got a running back room that's really, devoid of much experience, at least experience at Ohio State. And at quarterback, we've got a guy that virtually has never really thrown a ball in anger before. And, how are they going to do? But I think the first answer that I'm getting on those three questions are about Julian Sane. Julian Sane is a guy that's locking down the starting position, really doing all the little things away from the field that you'd want from a starting quarterback, really assuming a leadership role. The guys are kind of responding well to him. And that's always kind of a delicate dance because you're never sure how a young guy is going to do that. He's really young. He's really young and inexperienced. And so that's a tough combination for some of the upperclassmen to kind of, look back on and really have respect for. But I think he's steadily gaining the respect of the older players. And, to me, from what I'm hearing, he's the clear number one. He's clearly going to be the guy. And, I still have questions about the defensive line and how we're going to stop the run. I'm getting answers about how we're going to generate pass rush. And I think a lot of that's going to be with exotic pressure and doing things we're not going to be dependent on having that transcendent talent to kind of get home in terms of doing it that way. And I think our running back position, Donaldson, we already look. You remember where I don't. You may be too young to remember where you were when the Challenger blew up, or when when Ronald Reagan got shot, or when the Twin Towers came down, or where you were when you saw the run by C.J. Donaldson on the first day of practice. But after that run, he has certainly established himself as a guy that could be a contributor for Ohio State. So I think we're slowly but surely getting answers on the running back room, on stopping the run defensively. But I'm going to give you the answer on the quarterback thing. Julian saying, having a really good spring, stepping into it first week, really looks the part, and I think he's the answer to the question.
Yeah, I think Julian has got the thing locked up. I mean, you're going to hear coaches speak, and we're a long way to go, and it's first inning and a lot of time. But I think Julian's got this thing locked up. I mean, he's all that. I mean, again, they knew when they went out and got him, they were probably going to lose air, which they did. When you take a guy in the same class, you know that one of them's probably going to transfer. You don't generally, in the portal era. I mean, everyone's getting transfer portal quarterbacks, but when you take a guy in the same class, one of them, the lesser of the two, is going to end up leaving. And Air took off and went to South Carolina, which is great. But I'm with you. Like at the beginning of spring, the two biggest questions to me were the defensive line and the quarterback. And I sleep like a baby with Julian Sand as the starting quarterback at this point. The D line kind of terrifies me just because we're so thin. And again, our frontline guys are really good. They're not as good as last year as a whole, but they're going to be good. And then, what do you get out of CJ Hicks? I think CJ Hicks is a guy that can add immense value if he can really stop the run. For CJ, it all comes down to, can he play the run? Can he hang in there? And that's the same with Caden Curry. I mean, because those are light guys, and when teams see those light guys out at defensive end, they like to run at them. They're not going to just let them pass rush and get upfield and disrupt their game plan with their speed. When you get those light guys out there, they're going to run at them. And that's something with Caden where he just wasn't ever really a factor on early downs because he is light. He's small. And so when you put him out there, teams are going to run at him. They're going to pick on him. And you see that and Kenyatta's the same way. I mean, those two guys have got to become better players against the run. And I think Caden Curry is a much better pass rusher than Kenyatta is. But they both have, they both want to keep playing football after this year. And they both have been dying to start and play. And now they get to. Now it's on them. Now it's on them to take that step and become complete players, guys that play the run, guys that are physical. Because again, that's the thing that I kept saying when I watched Jack and JT last year is that there's no statistic for physicality and playing the run and being hard to go against for tight ends and offensive tackles. But those two guys are really hard to go against. And as much as people wanted to kill those guys for the sack numbers and whatever else during the regular season, like when teams that would run on us, I mean, we would stomp them. Those two along with Cody Simon, then obviously Ty and Tyleek in the middle, formidable to say the least. And not even Sonny, Sonny with 6'5" well linebacker. I mean, that is a physically imposing front six when you've got that the nickel 4-5 defense. So I'm interested to see if anyone hops in the portal at D tackle or D end, to see if we try to shore that up. I just think that, if we could add another end to the mix, I think it would be really, really strong, but it's tough because these guys want to start, and that's something that hurts us, when we don't guarantee guys starting spots. And we've seen some of the crazy, proposals and NILs and everything else where, like the kid that was with the Florida Gators wanted to be guaranteed that he'd be on the field on third down at all times. And he had all these little contract stipulations. And I was like, that guy's dad needs to get out and get some fresh air and take a walk. So, but no, I think that the offensive line is coming together. I think that obviously our tackles, the guys, the new guys are getting into better shape. They're all still too heavy. They don't want any guys over 335. So when they're listing you at 57 and 42 and whatever, like they want to get those guys down. And I think that that's something that might be hindering those guys from taking the starting spots right away. Because Austin Seyerveld's in ripper shape. I mean, he's a guy that was a monster. And when you see the three guys that are Iron Buckeyes, it's JJ and Sonny and Austin Sarwell. And again, there's 100 guys on, there's 100-ish guys on the team. We have that 105 cap now. And when only 3 guys make Iron Buckeye, it shows how it's like almost impossible to get. I mean, I think we had more guys that were All-Americans last year than we did Iron Buckeyes this winter. And I think that that's something that you have to pay attention to. Nevada, as we get into spring, second week coming up, what are some of the things that you'd like to hear? Like, kind of just game out, what would be your ideal? Because we always talk to people that are at practice. We do that basically after every practice. What are some things you would like to hear over the next week as they work into their first scrimmage next Saturday?
Well, I mean, I'd like to hear the name Jason Moore more. I'd like to hear the name Eric Mensah more. I'd like to hear that C.J. Hicks is really finding a spot as a pass rushing, defensive end. Um, on the offensive line, side, I'd like to see the tackles start moving, up into, more starting types of positions as opposed to the kind of the backups. And I'd like to see James Peoples be a dude and have everybody raving about James Peoples. I mean, one of the things that I've already heard about, I mean, you look at who are the Iron Buckets? The Iron Buckets were Austin, Sonny and JJ. Is that right? That was the three.
That was it.
I mean, but JJ freaking Smith is your Iron Buckeye, and as you said, so JJ Smith, who's your best player, is also your hardest worker. I mean, that's just absolutely unfair. That combination right there, and it's kind of crazy. I think Carson was an Iron Buckeye for the last 2 years in a row, and when people can say all they want about how that, it's just a workout warrior thing or it doesn't really mean anything, but Austin, Sonny, and JJ are pretty good players, and Carson last year was a guy that was languishing on the bench, and the helping technician was just screaming that guy should be starting, and people were like, "Oh, HT, what do you know? The coaches know better. He can't play." And no, sometimes coaches miss, man. Sometimes coaches get a blind spot for a guy or whatever it is. But with Coach Mick, if a guy's an Iron Buckeye, I'm not saying it's a perfect barometer. It doesn't fit perfectly to success, but it's a pretty good idea that the guy is certainly dedicated because the standard is almost impossibly high to get it. And the fact that JJ is a guy that's qualified, and Sonny, I mean, Sonny's already got an abundance of physical gifts. It would be really easy for a guy that's that gifted physically to kind of slough off in the, on the conditioning side, on the weight room side. And, he puts in the work, man. And he's another guy that, as good as he was last year, is there another level for Sonny Styles? Yeah, he could definitely level up. And if he levels up on the defense, you've got the best defensive player in America and Caleb Downs, and the best offensive player in America and J.D. Smith in your team. Look, that's a pretty good start for the Ohio State Buckeyes in 2025.
Yeah, and to make Iron Buckeye, just to kind of clarify for people that didn't know, it's basically, you obviously have to be at every workout, which is the easiest part. And then you can't have any loafs. You can't have any poor effort days. You can't have any, they kind of grade your effort every day. So you have to have an exceptional level of effort every day. You got to it's tough. I mean, we used to have a grading system where every day after every workout, like when I played there with Eric Lichter as a strength coach, we would be graded. There was like national champion was the highest. I'll never forget that. And then there was like winning, and then there was losing, and then there was like maize and blue. There were like 4 tiers to it. And so there were days where I would like kill myself, and like I would come in and it would say like winning, or I don't know if it was like winning or all Big Ten, or it was something like that. But like I thought I should have had a national championship day, and I would be so angry. Like when I'd have like a big day, and sometimes like I remember the one time Jeff Ulenik, he said I took too long in between sets, and I was like, well, yeah, because I was squatting 645 pounds. Like that was my last set. So it's like, when you're powerlifting, you got to take like 5 minutes in between sets because that's just how it is. Like you can't rapid fire, I mean, I couldn't. And most people, when they're doing max effort stuff, you can't just do it every 2 minutes. Like that's just part of the natural progression. You gotta, take some water, make sure you don't want to be catching a cramp. You don't want, but you make sure your energy, but you also don't want to get cold. So there's like that fine line of when you're in between sets, like you want to take enough time to get the rest, but then you don't want to rest too long and get cold because you don't want to re-warm up when you're in that mode. But I'll never forget, I was like, I squatted more than anybody on the team did yesterday. And it's like, I took 5 minutes because you need to. When you're doing like a max effort day, it's like, and you're trying to push big weight, you can't just do it every 90 seconds. I mean, you just can't.
See, but Kirk, see, you remind me, you remind me of myself when I'm at the health club, because I'll go there and like I'll do a set and then I'll go get like a smoothie or something like that, and then head to the sauna, and then maybe go back and get like a muffin or something like that, because they have like really good muffins, like a carrot raisin muffin or something like that, and then walk back and maybe walk by the pool or something like that, because you got to pace
go bet on 6 soccer games and then watch those finish out each individually.
While I'm eating my muffin.
Yeah. There's a some card in South Korea that I can bet on, an MMA card in Brazil that they don't even have electricity down there, so you get to lay those down and then you're like, oh man, I forgot I was supposed to get on the treadmill for another lap, but I didn't get it. I didn't get there.
Kirk's like, hey, we need to pace ourselves, but like, exactly, when you're speaking, you're like speaking to me. You're like a voice inside my head. I gotta pace myself.
Well, I would because I would be like kind of a prick, because like some guys, I'd be like, that's seriously all you can squat, and you play at Ohio State, like you're 320 pounds and you squat 405 for your last set. Like that's like my first set, warm up, stretch, then throw 405 on and rep that out for 10, and then go 5s and 3s. And it's like some of these guys, I was like, well, and I told him, I was like, well, if you want me to like work faster, I could just do what everyone else does and not push the weight heavy. And because there were always guys that were scared of getting hurt in the gym. And I was like, you're not going to get hurt. I mean, if you have bad form or if you're stupid, I mean, you might get hurt. But I mean, we've got spotters. We had really safe, our equipment's all incredibly safe. But that was the stuff that I'll never forget. I came in like, I squatted like 645, the highest on the team. And they gave other guys national championship, and they didn't give it to me. And I was, that stuff always mattered to me. Like, I always cared about my grades game to game. I cared about my workout grades. I cared about anything that was competitive or that could keep score. I was like psycho about. And I remember there'd be sometimes they grade our games. And they grade practices now with Urban and Ryan. Like when I played, we didn't grade practice. And again, I don't know why, but we just never did. So we didn't get like a grade for how our spring practice did yesterday. But I always wanted to just keep pushing it as hard as I could, but it was good though, because again, when you've got that thing where you're supposed to be the leader and the captain, like a guy like Sonny who's going to be a captain this year, he needs to be an Iron Buckeye. He needs to be at that level. And again, like when you're Sonny, like this is it. I mean, dude, you're going to be, he's like, I think he's 20. I don't think he's 21 yet. I mean, he's really young for being a senior. But he's the guy that, he's got to turn up in the weight room, because this is it. I mean, you want to be as big and as strong and as physical and as cardioed up as you can be as you head down the stretch of your senior year. Because I mean, dude, you're going to be in the NFL at this time next year, and you don't want to leave anything to chance. And that's the thing that like I applaud with JJ, because think about if you're JJ and people are saying you're one of the 3 or 4 greatest wide receiver prospects to come down the pike since Calvin Johnson and Jamar Chase and some of the luminaries, and you watch Jamar Chase sign for $40 million a year, 2 hours down the road in Cincinnati. Like, does that make you want to head back to the gym and get another workout in? Probably. Does it make you want to stay in and get rest and take care of your body? Probably. And again, like with JJ, I mean, he already acts like he's a 10-year NFL guy, because he's as straight of an arrow as we've ever had, and all the kid wants to do is work out and train and play football. That's it. He's like a robot. And that's the best kind of guy to give your NIL money to, because, he wants to be exceptional. He wants to be in the conversation for greatest players in the history of Ohio State, which it could be. And there's a shot that he could be our best receiver ever. He's kind of on that trajectory right now, because nobody's ever had a freshman year like that. Not to mention winning the national title. So,
hey, Kirk, not to interrupt you, but I think Jesse Mendez just won the national championship in wrestling.
Oh, good. You got that
for the second year in a row. He won to beat the number 1 guy. And yeah, he beat Brock.
Was it a Penn State guy?
No, he beat Brock Hardy, who was number one. I don't know where Brock Hardy was from. I'd have to check where he was from Nebraska. Beat Brock Hardy to win back-to-back national championships in wrestling. I mean, you want to talk about a tough sport like
Oh
wrestling?
God.
I know. You football players are tough, Kirk, but man, wrestlers are a different kind of tough. And
Yeah.
I mean, it's brutal, and that's a gladiator. You want to talk about gladiatorial? It's like if your battle for tackle was like one-on-one in a singlet in front of the entire crowd. Like,
Versus a thousand guys.
exactly.
A thousand guys across the country, and you got to be the best one to be an All-American.
Yeah, you got to beat them all one on one in one on one combat. I mean,
Yeah.
so Jesse, man, what a badass, and he wins back to back national championships, and people were not they were picking against him. They're picking against him. He was only the third seed coming into the tournament, I believe, and that Hardy guy was a pretty consensus number one. So took him down. Ohio State wins another national championship in wrestling, individual national championship. But good for them. Great job. Wanted to give that shout out.
Did you live bet it or no?
I would have, man. I watched Mendez. He won in overtime, or yeah, I think it was over. Was it? I think it was overtime yesterday. And well, no, he won on escape time. He escaped like 3 seconds before the guy, or whatever it was. But they asked him how he managed to escape with like 3 seconds to go, and he's like, "I'm just tougher than he is." And it was just like dead cold, like an Undertaker just saying it. And then the guy's he's a bad man, so I wasn't going to bet against him. That's for sure.
He said, "I knew Nevada laid the ranch on me, so I had to make sure I got out with
Oh
escape
man,
time."
he delivered. I'm just so man. I just know how impossibly hard it is to be a good wrestler, and I can't even imagine. And I'm just talking about high school because my kid was a good high school wrestler, but like to be a college wrestler and to be a national champion, that's about 97 levels above that. And I just have so much respect for those guys.
It's a brutal sport, man, because I mean, you can't really take too much time off from it. And I mean, you've got the conditioning aspect of wrestling is insane. That and football is one thing, but like wrestling, man, when it's just nonstop aerobic activity, man, it's brutal. It's something where you can't and nobody can save you if you don't have a good day. And things
No,
have to go right. Like the thing is when those guys get after it, man, you have to battle through injuries, you have to battle through a lot of different things that are tough. And again, I love wrestling. I think it's a great sport to watch. It's a great sport to participate in. My dad actually was a wrestler. He went to States. I didn't wrestle because I played basketball and then got into football. But I don't know. Like it's those guys, they get all the respect in the world. And if you guys have never been to an Ohio State wrestling match, oh my God, are they fun? I mean, I've been to one. John Lorman took me to one. He's a wrestling donor, and it's one of the Cavelli Center is an incredible environment, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful place. And I just love I love everything about what they've done, building that kind of smaller arena. It's intimate. So for wrestling, it's like, I mean, I watched them wrestle Cornell last year, and it was packed house. They won on the last match. It was insane. So if you guys have not been to one, you should go. It's like, I mean, it is. I'd never been to one, and it was incredible. So, um, but yeah. Well, Nevada, I think we can wrap this thing up. We had again, I'm excited about the energy around the team. I'm excited about spring. Now the guys are fully padded going forward. And it's exciting to see this team start to come together and gel a little bit, knock the rust off of the championship celebrations, and they are going to go to the White House. It looks like on April 15th, or I think the 14th. So that'll be really cool. I'm excited for these guys to get to go experience that because I love history. I'm reading the Bill O'Reilly's book about the presidents right now that he just put out. It's fantastic. So I love reading about history, and the White House trip's gonna be incredible. Great photo ops for Ryan Day and for the team to go there. But yeah. Any final thoughts about it?
no, just excited about the team. I think spring ball's going about as smoothly as we could possibly hope it could go for right now. And every week we're getting answers. Like I said, we've got, to me, we've got about 1/3 of the questions answered. We got to get answers on running back and defensive line. And then this will have been and stay injury free. And this will have been a very successful spring. But Ryan's a different guy, man. He's
Oh,
relaxed.
God.
He's completely out of his own head now, and I just think I think coaching for him is going to be a joy now going forward instead of any bit of a chore that it might have been. And I think we're going to see the best of Ryan Day in 2025 and beyond, and I'm excited for that.
Well, the funny thing is, even before he won the national championship, he probably would have made it into the College Football Hall of Fame if he would have stopped coaching the day before the national title game. Now that he's won one, he's locked in as a College Football Hall of Famer. If he quit today, he'd be the first ballot College Football Hall of Famer. But I think that getting that monkey off your back makes your life incredible. And again, I'm happy as can be for the guy because I think that it's a brutal existence, especially in this town. As close as they've been, and they've been knocking at the door, and they kick the door in, and they win the Natty. And I just think that starts the supernova of good for Ohio State when it comes to recruiting, when it comes to hiring coaches. You see the way that coaches develop here. You see that our last two coordinators became the highest paid coordinators in the NFL and in college. I think that if you're like Matt Patricia, if you're some of these guys that people might have a question or two about, I have no questions about Matt Patricia. I think Matt Patricia is going to be one of the best hires that I think it'll be like a Jim Knowles level hire. Jim Knowles was grand slam home run for Ryan Day. I think Patricia is going to be that kind of guy, kind of resurrect his career, and who knows how good it'll go. But this will be, he has a real chance to do something special because this team's lost a lot on defense, but his creativity is something where every year when I used to study New England and I would say, man, they lost this guy, and they lost Chandler Jones, and they lost Will Fork, and they lost Richard Seymour, and they'd lose these guys, and then they'd still be just as good, which again, that is a credit to exceptional coaching. It's a credit to exceptional toughness and doing everything the right way, and doing things at a very high level. And that's, the culture and the coaching of New England. And again, I love that they hired Nate Ebner too. Because again, I always love when there's these synergies of people that kind of know, because nobody knows what Matt Patricia wants more than Nate Ebner, because he was around him for so long and he played safety for him. Also, he's a all pro level special teams guy. But yeah, I love that hire. And again, when these guys, Matt Patricia, the only thing I worried about with him was the fact that he didn't get to bring a single one of his coaches. Like, he didn't have a guy that knew his system or knew the Patriot way or knew what he was going to try, the culture he's going to implement on defense, because again, he's walking into a room that was number one in the country. And, no matter what anybody says with Tim Walton and Matt Gray, I'm sure that they both had some sort of feelings when, you're bringing in an outsider and I didn't get promoted to be coordinator. And even if everything's square and good now and they got raises and title promotions and everything, there's probably a little bit of sting there that they weren't picked by Ryan, but Ryan made the right decision. He went out and got an ace of a defensive mind. And I'm just really excited to see what goes on this week, because they're going to have moments in practice where Ryan he wants to see Brian Hartline call plays live, because right now they script a lot of stuff. It's different, but when you start getting these scrimmages, like, it's call it. There's nothing scripted, and it's him versus Matt Patricia live one-on-one in practice, and it's going to be fantastic. So with that being said, I appreciate you guys being a huge part of our show. Sorry, I was rolling for a few days, but now we are all back and ready to rock. But I just appreciate you guys so much for all that you do. If you guys enjoy our content, please leave us a like, click subscribe, also click that little alert bell. Again, I appreciate you guys being a part of this. Make sure you subscribe to our show on Apple Podcast. Click on the podcast app inside of your iPhone, type in Buckeye Scoop, click subscribe. But I just appreciate you guys so much for everything that you guys do. That being said, thank you so much, Buckeye Nation. Thank you, Scoop family. I just can't wait to see you guys again tomorrow night. We'll be back at our regular time, 7:10. Be ready to rock. Go Bucks.